I would like to welcome everyone to our third GDG Dev Dialogue. Today, our guest is Metsehafe Tesfu. Can you begin by introducing yourself a little bit and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm audible, right? Yeah, cool. All right. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Metsehafe. I'm a fifth year software engineering student at AASTU. Um, well, a little bit highlight about me. I'm an A2SV alumni. Yeah, so that's pretty much about me.
Okay, that was nice. So let's kick off by the first question. So how do you feel about achieving so much? You said you're a fifth year software engineering student, an A2SV alumni, a mentor. You had your Bloomberg internship. It seems like you've done so much. And how do you feel about it?
Um, Very interesting. It's quite a shock, I would say. It's not like I didn't expect good things for myself, but this is a lot more than I was expecting, especially when I first joined software engineering. Uh, I knew I had to find some way to do good at my field. So I started by teaching myself some full stack development as soon as I joined software. Um, I surrounded myself by talented people who what motivated me to keep on going, and also having the chance to have joined A2SV and also having gotten the chance to do my internship at Bloomberg. It was quite overwhelming, especially when as it was happening. The A2SV thing, it wasn't as difficult to get into, but during my interviews at Bloomberg, I was not believing that I was making it past the stages of the interview. Um, it just kept on feeling like a dream as soon as I kept on going. It was like 5 interviews, so that was a lot to go through. But yeah, uh, it just kind of happened, and I was just there for the ride.
Well, that's really wonderful to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about the interview process? You said there were 5 interviews. That seems like a lot. So what was the process like?
Yeah, so 5 interviews, each is split. Basically, the reason Bloomberg has 5 interviews is they kind of test everything, and on each step they check the cultural fit and also how good you are, how good you can perform. They check your potential. So it's not really that big a surprise they have that many interviews. Basically, the 5 interviews was split into the first two were technical, so doing system development. The third one was system design. If you don't know, it's basically you're supposed to you're given a scenario and you're supposed to design on top of it, basically test it. Um, Fourth one was um, the HR interview, which was basically they just check your culture fit, and the last one was an engineering manager, a very experienced person. Yeah, it was a bit challenging to go through the last three because I was not familiar with system design before that much before the interview was close. So I only had like 2 weeks to get ready. HR, you just need to talk more, and engineering manager is just a bit tough, but well, kind of got through it somehow.
Sorry about that. One sec. Mitaku, can you please mute your Mitsuko, may you please mute your screen, please? Okay, thank you. So continuing, you mentioned that you went to A2SV, so it means that you've been working towards the Bloomberg internship for a while. So during the interview preparation, was there like any specific challenge that you faced? Was there like any moment where you were like, how can I get through this? Any sort of fraction or anything that was happening during that time?
Yeah. So there's quite a few things. As well, like it's been a while, but definitely the feeling of frustration of not knowing what like how to impress an interviewer. That was definitely the most challenging bit, because for the technical parts, well, as I was in A2SV, I was okay with technical questions. Just go from simpler like implementations to like more difficult ones. uh, Give them like that's that part is a bit easier to impress them with. But for once I was past the first two interviews, it was all hell. Like, yeah, it was very difficult, especially for the system design. I was not ready at all. I did not know any uh, system design like prep beforehand. So that was interesting uh, to get past this, because the guy who interviewed me actually had like 7 years experience, and he knew his way around, obviously. But well, I kind of made my way through it. It was especially frustrating at the middle, because he asked me a question I was not familiar with at all. Especially, yeah, I was not familiar at all. But the guy was kind enough to like tell me how to do what he said. So that part was that part what well. Yeah. Other than that, the rest, it all just came down to how good of a story you can tell, both for the HR and engineering manager. Um, yeah, just learn to talk, uh, what you have on your mind.
When you say like HR and like talking, do you have any communication skills that you developed towards interviews? Is there like like specific jargon or a way of presenting yourself that you used during these interviews?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's special, but generally for, I guess, for most Bloomberg interviews, I guess, let me just talk about the structure a little bit. Basically, on each interview, you'd have 15 minute of like CV review, or like basically you have to tell them about yourself, and then you go into the main part of the interview, except for the last two, which are all talking. Basically, beforehand, my English is quite okay, so I was comfortable with speaking my mind, but I had to prepare a lot for the interviews, specifically because I needed to answer a few things that these companies find essential, which is why do you want to join that company? I think that's the most important question for any interview. Every company wants to know why you actually want to join that company, and they want to verify if you're actually interested. So being prepared for how to answer why said company is important. And you basically have to relate what you have in your background, basically your history, and what they do, and then try to reason out by saying that, well, that's why you want to join that company. Other than that, um, the rest of it was you basically need to prepare for behavioral questions, like typical questions. Let's say when you get asked like your strengths and weaknesses, you don't want to mention like an actual weakness that these people would find, well, so that they wouldn't be interested in you, but you want to kind of hide it by saying you want to hide your strengths as your weaknesses and kind of put it out there like that. But there's a lot of techniques that come with it. It needs quite a lot of time for preparation, but it kind of comes along with, well, the time you spend in preparation for these.
That was going to be my next question. How how much time did you prepare? So is there like a total coding hour that you did for these preparations? Again, how much time did you spend researching these companies?
Yeah. So for the coding stuff, I was fresh off of the A2SV stuff. So uh, my skills were not rusty at all. So it was, well, pretty good. So for in terms of prep for the coding stuff, I did not spend more than a day. Basically, the day beforehand or like a couple days beforehand, I go through questions that are commonly asked by Bloomberg or like by the company I'm getting interviewed by. Go through those, get my well, get under the habit of explaining what I'm thinking as I'm trying to do the question. Once I'm done with that, for the other prep, for the behavioral part, I was as soon as I heard I had an interview, I started preparing. So I think before my first interview, I spent like a week or two just getting prepared, like preparing on how to answer the common questions, behavioral questions, like tell me about yourself, why Bloomberg, your strengths and weaknesses, what the most challenging thing you've done, those type of questions. You can just look at them online. So yeah, I kind of spent quite a lot of time, especially like once I know I had an interview. All that time afterwards until the interview comes has just been spent on preparing.
That's really interesting. Can you give us kind of like a timeline? So you spent a year at A2SV, and then you spent like a few days preparing for these interviews. Then what was like the interval like till you eventually got to London?
Okay, so it's not just a few days. I guess the interview process took a couple months, like 1 to 2 months. It would have been like shorter than that, but there was the holiday season back then, so it was around this time where by this time I've done my second interview already, and then once the holiday season passes, like the New Year's plus Christmas goes past, I did my 3 interviews within like 2 weeks. So in total, it took like a couple months to get the final response from them to get the offer. For the rest of the year, I was just sat waiting for somebody to tell me it's all a dream, and that didn't actually happen. But well, it was not a dream, and it did actually happen, and it went pretty well. By basically by June, um, so I went to London by June 6th, 15 or 16, I believe 16. I had my last final exam on a Friday, and then I went to London on Sunday. So that was quite the schedule to have. And I started working on Monday. So that was even crazier. But well, yeah, that was kind of the timeline.
Well, that was such a rush, especially I think once you got there, it feels
Yeah,
like it was a lot for you.
definitely.
But it sounds very interesting. So during your A2SV experience while you were there, was there any person who inspired you, like for your success? Do you have people who motivated you, who inspired you, or who inspires you in general?
Did you say during my time in ATSV or
While you were there, as well as just in general,
oh in London?
in London as well, just
Okay.
who is kind of your inspiration for these things? You seem to be very hardworking and motivated. So, where do you get this sort of motivation from?
That's a difficult question to answer, I think, because for the longest time, it's not like I was motivated by people specifically. I just kind of did what I had to do because I thought it was important. To be honest, I was around very skillful people, and I'm quite, I like competition. So that kind of drives me every day. Uh, During my time in A2SV, there were like in my group, so I was in group 46. Um, there were a couple of people who are very smart, very talented people, and just being around them kind of made me feel like I needed to work a lot harder to be comparable to them, which I still don't think I am quite there yet, to be honest. So in group 46, there was Nardos. He was a very good competitive programmer. For anyone in A2SV, you know who Nardos is. Also, for anyone in A2SV, you also know who Yudne is. Yudne Kacho is a very good friend of mine, very talented guy. Just there's a lot to learn from these people. I feel like they just keep me going, I think. So having like good, well, talented people around you kind of helps you keep on track because you see how good they're doing and you feel inclined to keep on doing more.
That's really cool. What about at Bloomberg? Did you have like a mentor there who was helping you get more set up?
Mhm. Yeah, so the way Bloomberg's mentorship works is basically when you join a team, they assign you a mentor within that team. So I had a Nigerian mentor, very cool guy. He really made it easy for me to like do my tasks because well, I was sat next to him, so I could ask him as many questions as I can. And he was making quite a lot of time for me to like make it easy for him to ask questions. Um, and then yeah, that whole setup was actually very nice. In my team, I had quite a lot of experienced people. My manager was a very cool guy. There were like people who were like 10 years, 17 years experience within my team. Even within my sister's team, like there were like similar people, very good people. And I could just ask them questions, especially the guy with like 17 years experience. He was so good. Like I could be spending like an hour or two on like a problem that I was having, and I could just call him and it would take him like 2 minutes to like solve it and then go back to the seat. So yeah, you do get a reality check when you work with these people. Like they're actually really good. They know what they're doing. Obviously, it comes with the experience. Um, yeah, but it's quite interesting to be around these people. And I feel like I hit the jackpot with my team. They're very supportive, very inclusive people. We had lunch pretty much every day, so it was easy to socialize with them. Yeah, so that was just having that experience in general was very cool.
Yeah, that sounds really, really nice. So what was your role at Bloomberg, and was there any challenge to it? And if there were any challenges, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so basically, I was at Bloomberg. I was in a backend oriented team. They did like APIs. They provided APIs, and they also built a rate limiting system for whatever system they had. It's a bit complex, and I didn't really go into that in depth. But they did quite a bunch of backend stuff. So they worked with C++. That's their main language they used, and they did some scripting, some automations, some that type of stuff. But my project specifically was a full stack project, so I got to work with the C++ backend, their JavaScript front end. That was interesting. For the backend stuff, they all knew backend. They all knew that C++ pretty well, so it was easy to ask them about that. Uh, I used C++ a lot when I was here as well. I did competitive programming with C++, but it was not the same type of C++ I was used to. So it took some time to get used to that. And then after that, once I started working on the front end, since the team didn't work with front end as much, it was easier to get comfortable to work with to find solutions to the problems I was facing. It took a bit more time than the backend stuff I was working on. The main challenge I was facing was I wasn't sure if I was going at the right pace because usually since this is my first like experience at a big company, I was unsure if they wanted me to take it slow and learn the stuff or like just go straight to the code, try to code it up, find issues, and then like slowly work towards it. Um, but they were very kind to me. So I took at my own pace and slowly got better at it. For the problems I are facing there, just the team overall just helped me a lot. I got to ask as many silly questions as I can. Yeah, so that definitely helped.
So when it comes to like London, do you have like a favorite spot that you went to? How was London as a whole?
Yeah. Now I get to talk about my favorite things. That is very nice. London was an amazing city. I'd say the best city in the world. Not because I went there, but definitely it's very nice. In terms of spots within London, I guess I didn't explore enough to say like from the overall side of things. But just when I was there, I traveled a lot, like within the UK. I got to visit a few cities, hike by myself. Yeah, I do like to torture myself a bit. Got to meet the other A2SV people that were there. That was definitely a lot of fun. They're like what a couple more years experienced than I was, so it was good to socialize with them. Um, what would I say my favorite place is? Well, there's this restaurant chain called Nando's. I'm not sure if you know it. I would say that's my favorite spot. Definitely the best food I've had.
That's really nice. So for working there, so what was your kind of like day in the life of Metsehafe Yasu at Bloomberg? Like what was that sort of like?
Hmm. Yeah. So let's just. So I had. So I could have taken days. I could have worked from home, but I never did because I really wanted to experience the office a lot more. But during my day, basically, I start early in the morning, like 5 a.m., 5:30. Um, go to the gym, come back, go to the like I take the tube to the office. There's free breakfasts there, so I just have that. Um, uh, I'm usually quite early, so I get there a bit early. Some of my team members are not there, but a few are. Like the more experienced people are there quite early, so I get to talk to them a little bit, and then I'm quite a morning person, so I get to do most of my tasks in the morning. I do that. Um, I have my daily stand up at 10:30 a.m. I believe. Would have that meeting. Once I'm done with that, I usually have a meeting with my mentor to like to check on my progress, where I am, any questions I have. Once I'm done with that, work on my project some more. Lunch depends on the day, but usually I would either have lunch with my team, the other interns, or the A2SV people that work at Bloomberg. So I can have days where like I can be with any of them. I would go out for lunch. There's quite a few decent spots around the office, so just go there. The summer was nice, so quite a few times what I did was I went with my team, and then we go sit at a park or like St. Paul's Cathedral. There's a basically you can sit at by the sun, have our lunch outside, which was very fun. It's my first time having to willingly eat outside like that, and then go back to the office. Usually after lunch, I'm quite slow. I don't work as well, but basically I have a standing desk, so I just try to keep myself from sleeping by standing and working. And then yeah, that's usually it. Basically, by the end of the day, if I have any more questions, I get to ask any of them. If not, well, that should be it. And then basically go home or try to do things, start to experience London a bit more. Uh, there was a few days, where, like during the internship, I had quite a few days where there were a lot of internship events. So usually it's either after work or like could take maybe sometime from work. And then there's quite a few intern events where I got to enjoy, well, some activities with the other interns and basically learn a lot from them.
That sounds really, really cool. So whenever you're like getting to the work mindset, are there any kind of rituals you do to sort of like lock in, or do you just go straight to work?
Um, I wouldn't say I have a ritual per se. It's just that I'm quite the morning person, so the only reason I even go to work that early is to get my stuff done as early as possible. So I guess you can call it a ritual if I go there early, work on everything I can, and then wait for the day to end. Not sure if you could really call that a ritual. But it, I just kind of split. That's the time I try to spend during my day. Get things done early, so that for the rest of the day I can either spend it socializing with my team, um, socializing with the other interns, or like do something a bit more productive because I don't code as well in the afternoon.
Right. So start early as possible and then kind of based on your energy levels, work towards that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So back to like your preparation, you mentioned about your CV and resume. What do you believe made your stand out against like the other 100,000 applicants?
Uh, your guess is as good as mine. Not gonna lie. I try to add a so I started preparing my CV as early as I possibly could. I tried to look at a lot of different templates online just to see what is working for different people. It seems like there's no strict guideline that says this CV is better. I mean, there's a few things you can do that, well, make it look decent, but there's no way you can guarantee anything. So what I did was there's this format called Jake's resume. I'm not sure if anybody knows it. It's pretty much you keep it as simple as possible so that your CV is uh, the format is readable by the ATS that they use. This ATS usually grades it and makes you pass or fail, and then that's when, like, once you make it past the ATS is when the recruiter actually sees it. So you kind of was what I worked towards was having my CV good look decent enough so that it could get past the ATS, but also when the recruiter sees it, it should look at least decent enough so that okay, this person has some potential. So kind of focused on a few things that from my research, it seemed like these companies really wanted to see from students. It was like if you have experience, they want that experience. If not, they want experience through projects. So you basically emphasize on what kind of projects you work on, basically having your showing your technical skills through your resume by having decent projects. Basically, you want your projects to be impactful. It could be for the people around you, for you, or it could be like a learning experience, but you want it to be like a bit complex so that you could say you learned a lot from it. Basically, once you have those things, and then since you're a student, it's good to have extracurricular stuff as well. So basically, club activities, that type of stuff works really well. So you kind of want to add those into your resume, try to make it fit into one page, and then pretty much just pray, hope for the best.
Oh, so when you're kind of like building your resume, is there
Mhm.
like maybe a specific tech stack you would recommend that maybe, that's more general towards these internships? Like, since you've kind of seen the majority of the organizations, like what their requirements are, is
Mhm.
there kind of an overlap in terms of tech stack that they would require us to kind of learn more or know more?
Yeah. So in terms of tech stack, they don't really care. Most companies are actually language agnostic, other than they don't care what language you use. But it's very common to have C++, Python, JavaScript because these are quite common languages in general. They would use it very often in production. But it is, again, they're usually agnostic, so they don't care what language you use. Um, Depending on the company and what type of team you're going for, they could be a bit more specific. Let's say if your plan is maybe front end, it's obvious it's probably going to be more script oriented than, let's say, C++. But if you're going towards infrastructure or like backend stuff, it could be more about Java, uh, Go, maybe if it's Google, and what else? Yeah, Java, C++. So that type of languages. So basically, they don't care about the language specifically. They just want you to know the concepts. So they want object oriented because that's usually how they work. If you know your system design stuff, that's usually fine. So as long as you have those in mind, they don't really care what language it is.
So now I kind of have like two questions that are wrapped in one. The first one is, what kind of projects did you do before applying to Bloomberg? And the second one is, what kind of projects did you do after you went to Bloomberg?
Okay, after as in right now, like once I've been back, or like while I was
Yeah.
at.
Once now, currently, what are the projects you're working on once you're back here?
Okay, so before I went, I guess the type of projects I had on my CV weren't as impressive. One of the projects was, well, the topic was a food ordering app, but the thing is, I used Java. I used a few things from Java, like socket-based programming, if you know what that is. I used some multi-threading, yeah, and those type of things I thought were interesting enough. Like the topic was not decent, but the tools I used within that were I thought decent enough so that I added it on my resume. Um, I also added a hackathon project that I did with a few of my teammates within A2SV. Um, in general, I'm a full stack developer, so I worked both on front end and back end in general before I went. But I was mostly a JavaScript. That's the type of stuff I was working with. Once I came back, I guess I'm not really doing a lot of projects just by myself, but for the courses that I'm going through, I'm doing a bit. So I've been doing like some distributed systems recently. It was interesting. I used some of the tech that I used at Bloomberg. I used RabbitMQ. That was fun to go a bit more in depth now that I've experienced it a little bit while I was there. I didn't work on it fully then, but now I've seen how it works a bit more. Like, I have a lot more flexibility now. So I'm pretty much just going through those.
So for any student who's like, let's say a second year or like a fresh student, what would your advice be for them to get from, if they're a beginner as a software engineer, how would you advise them to go about their journey?
Yeah. Okay. That's well, the advice I would have is uh, basically try to learn as many things as possible. I'm not saying overwhelm yourself. Like you can go at your own pace, and nobody's rushing you. I mean, internships full time. It can all happen pretty much at any time. So just because you started today and try to learn what distributed systems with RabbitMQ or whatever, it doesn't mean you'll land an offer tomorrow. It doesn't really work like that. What you should do is go at your own pace, learn the things you're interested in, because I think your interest matters more. And then what you should know is if you're interested in something, there's probably a role for it. Depend in software engineering, there's so many things you could do that you can find something you're interested in. So try to know what you're interested in first, because you don't want to do something you're not interested in for the rest of your life, right? Basically, at the end of the day, kind of comes down to that. So take it slow, find things you're interested in, learn about it, and basically grow your knowledge. If you're trying to target like top tech companies, you should probably learn some data structures and also know when these internships come out so that you should apply when the time is right. It's usually around August. A little tip for you. Starting from August to like November and December, that's when most internships come out, most summer internships at least. So look out for those. Um, yeah, and it's even if you're not like second year or like fresh, even if you're like fourth, fifth year, it's still possible. Basically, there's still new grad positions. Basically, as soon as you're done with as soon as you graduate, basically, they still accept those people. So it's definitely a lot easier to join as a new grad than someone a bit more senior. Obviously, it's easier to be an intern than full time as well. So try to find a balance. Basically, learn what you need to know. So basically, learn data structures and then try to find something you're interested in. And usually should work out. Um, Joining like communities like A2SV or like probably GTG as well, that should really help you as well because you get to learn a lot from these people around you. Basically, having talented people or like people who work hard around you really motivates you to keep on going. So have that around you as well. Yeah.
Okay. So throughout this experience, what did you learn about yourself?
Like during the internship or during the ATOS.
Both, like in general. There seems to be a sort of like growth,
Mm-hmm.
um, either personal or like professional success. So, what kind of lessons have you gained throughout it all?
Well, I've learned that I'm more resilient than I thought I was because Bloomberg was not the first place I interviewed for. I had another interview at a place called Palantir, but I failed that one. And the rage I felt from that failure kind of drove me into really studying Bloomberg, like learning a lot more about them. And having that mentality, I feel like helped me a bit more for Bloomberg because I was a lot more prepared. I studied a lot more than I was expecting. I put in a lot more effort into it uh, than I was expecting it originally. So um, having that competitive spirit about like having to learn a bit more about that competitive spirit that I have was definitely something interesting to know. I mean, having professionally developed like that experience at Bloomberg really opened my eyes, I would say, because I got to meet people who are in a completely different realm than what I think I am, right? Like I've seen people who are like from MIT master's students who've done like two internships at Meta and then have done some other internships, or like people who've been like at companies that pay a shit ton. If you know, um, what was it called? If you know Jane Street or like Citadel, those are like hedge funds, like companies that pay, I believe, like 200K, 300K per year, which is like a lot of money. And having to meet these people who've had these experiences kind of gives you a perspective of where you lie in this world, because I was not well until that point. I thought I was doing okay, and then I saw those people, and I was like, there's a lot more I should work towards. So kind of gives you this, well, kind of gives this perspective where like there's still a lot more to look forward to. There's still a lot more things I need to learn, a lot more things I think I can achieve. It's obviously the different like backgrounds from these people that you get to see a lot and learn. So I would say having that different perspective and having seen these people just do the things they do, it's just it makes you want to sit down and think a lot more about the things you're doing today, and makes you think if I'm wasting my time by just sitting down and not doing nothing. because I've seen these people do magical things, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm not doing so well. But well, it's all a matter of perspective. So it's just a learning experience overall.
That was really inspirational. Like, I actually got motivated. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna think about my life and I'm gonna work towards it.
Yeah.
Um, so I am kind of a list sort of person. Like,
Mhm.
I need top like three things or sort of a very list way to memorize things. So if you had like three tips that you would give to students for mastering interviews, what would those three tips be?
Okay. So assuming these are just students who have no prior experience, right?
Yes.
Okay. So first thing is you need data structures and algorithms. So you need to have that under your basically under your belt. So have that experience. Do your lead codes. Do whatever your like tutorial you need to do questions for those. How you need at least that base is necessary. The second thing is communication. Um, you need to be comfortable talking to people you don't know. So basically, for interviews, you're talking to like HR people, people with like 10, 15 plus years experience. And you need to be able to articulate yourself so that these people can understand you. And that you should be able to get your point across, right? So work on your communication. If you're asking like how, a few things is there's quite a few tutorials online on like what to say like in these situations or like basically interview prep. But you also have websites like Pramp where you can do both technical and behavioral interviews with random people, so you can develop that well that way. So now that let's say you have, so assuming you've done the two things, which is well technical, prepare for behavioral. Basically, lastly, all you need is luck. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's something you can work on. Obviously, for interview, like landing an interview is more difficult than, so you need that luck. But actually, let's be serious. Basically, the three things you need is the technical, the behavioral, or like communication. Last one is basically build a decent CV. That is the most. I feel like that's the most important thing. Having an ICV makes the difference between landing, like getting an interview, and getting completely aired by these people.
I think that's really good.
Hmm.
I think that's a good summary of what are the checkpoints and kind of the path to
Hmm.
take. This whole time we've been talking about Bloomberg, but I don't think everybody knows what Bloomberg does. I know I didn't for the longest time. So what does Bloomberg kind of do?
Okay, so um, with, so I can't really blame you. Basically, Bloomberg is a financial. Basically, it's a tech company within the financial industry. If you've seen like black orange like window where they see a lot of the data, the analytics, that type of stuff. That's actually the Bloomberg terminal. That's their main product. So Bloomberg basically sells a platform where you can see a bunch of financial data. It has a bunch of features like the analytics stuff. You can also do some, I think you can like pricing stuff, as in terms of what things go for. So if you're doing like day trading, that type of stuff, it has a bunch of data on it. So it's basically a company that works with the finance stuff. They work with a shit ton of money. Um, Basically, the terminal goes for quite a lot of money. It's a subscription type of service, so they have a quite a lot of money flowing, and they also sell like so stocks. Basically, in terms of the finance stuff, they show you info about stocks, bonds, the like gold and stuff. Like some there's a I'm not that into finance, so I can't say I know everything that goes on. But the simplest way to explain it is they have information, a lot of financial information about a lot of companies, about the stocks, the bonds, the shares, uh, and you can also, I believe, you can buy and sell on their platform. I believe they have that as well. So they provide both for the buy side, which is for the individuals, and sell side, which is for companies. So they provide services for both sides of the financial industry. But they also have like the media stuff. They have philanthropy, which they do a lot of giving back to the community.
So I have just a few questions left, and next we will go to the people who are joining the call so they can ask you questions directly.
Okay.
So before the last question, this kind of focuses on what kind of projects are you working on right now, and are there anything that's upcoming like after Bloomberg? What's going to be next for you?
Well, I feel like I'm failed as a developer right now because I don't really have an interesting project that I'm working on. To be honest, I kind of want this year to be over with. That's all I'm kind of looking forward to. Um, but yeah, so don't really have much going on that side. Kind of focusing on my capstone project and having to graduate with the relatively okay uh, GPA that I have. So that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment. After Bloomberg, I guess now that I've done my internship, I guess I'm looking forward to trying to get a full time, well, back in London. So that's, I guess, one thing I'm looking forward to.
Okay, sorry about that for the little bit of the delay. So my last question is, if you had to write one line of code to sum up your life and career, what would it be?
Jeez. Well, I'll just have to print how is this happening because I can't believe I'm where I am today. And to be honest, it's quite a surreal experience to have gotten the opportunity to be at Bloomberg. Uh, Not gonna lie, even joining A2SV was quite a shock because I was not as prepared for the interview. Got lucky with the interview question, kind of taught my way through the behavioral stuff. The A2SV year was quite intense, but got to learn a lot from it. Got to experience my first traveling experience with A2SV, so that I learned a lot from that as well. And then, well, the Bloomberg thing happened. That was a shock. That I could not believe it until I got to what to the airplane. Because even then, it felt like, okay, this is basically he's pranking me, and this plane is gonna go all the way back just because. But yeah, somehow made it. Spent 15 weeks in London, which is an incredible experience. Yeah, so just how is this happening would just be the only thing I cranked to the console, I guess.
Thank you so much for telling us about your experience. I think Ikram has some questions, additional questions in the message tab. Can you see them?
Yes.
Yes. So can you just like go through them once more and kind of tell us?
Yeah, sure. So for what does Bloomberg do? I kind of explained that already, but it's a financial company that provides analytics and a platform for like both the buy side and sell side of the financial industry basically can get information. Their main asset is data, so they sell info. Um, and how is it like? What is it like to work in a top tech company as an intern? It feels quite surreal, um, mainly because they really take care of you as an intern. We had like one or two events every week for like what 12, 13 weeks straight. uh, I did a lot more things than I was expecting because they have these intern events. Basically got to see places I wouldn't go by myself, but since they funded, they put in money for it. It was like, well, quite an experience to have. So they really took care of us during the internship. Got to meet very experienced people, so got to learn a lot from them as well. Had an amazing team. Like my manager was very cool. I did a bunch of things with my team. Like we did a trip to Wales for like like a 3 day uh, like travel. So we went to Wales, did a hike, went around. It was very fun. We also did some go karting with my manager and some guy in my team. That was very fun. I feel like I really hit the jackpot with that as well. So it was a very surreal experience. Basically, every day is it just feels new and exciting. Even, like you come to the same office every day, but you do so many new things that it just feels surreal. Um, what to include in our cover letter when applying? Basically, your cover letter should answer two questions, which is the tell me about yourself and why you want to join that company. Basically, if you can answer these two questions, it's pretty much good to go. What skills? What skills should we have? Like graduated skills that will help us. If wait, sorry, that will help us if we land a job or internship. Um, okay, I'm assuming you're trying to ask what skills you need if you want to land a job or internship. Yeah, basically you need, I think it's really important to have both technical and communication skills. Those are the most important skills to have. Technical is achievable through time, training. Communication, it's not as straightforward because everybody has their own stories to tell, and you can't just copy what somebody else says. It doesn't really work as well because you will sound disingenuous when you say it if it doesn't come from you. So you need to put in time to on how to answer these questions. So definitely need to work on those two. Next question. Do you join a team and get trained as a beginner, or are you required to have some sort um so you need basically you're joining as a software engineer, so you need some basis, right? You need to know how to code, obviously, but you don't need some like specific types of skills. Like you need some generic software engineering skills. Like you need to code, you need to know how to debug. If you have decent communication skills, that you're kind of okay with what you get. Basically, how the internship works is you join a team of people who already work there. It's not going to be like a group of interns. There's usually one intern in a group of like seniors or like people who've already been there. So you join a team that already works, and you kind of learn as you go. That's kind of how it works. Yeah. So last questions from Ikram is, what does the HR want to hear from an interviewee? What's the one thing you mentioned that sets you apart from the interviews? I think uh, what might have set me apart is I was well prepared for why Bloomberg. There were like four things mentioned that I thought were really important that I think Bloomberg cares about because they have it everywhere on their website. So they are a massive force in the financial industry. Basically, they're a very impactful company. So being able to work in that I thought was important for me. So I mentioned that. They do a lot of philanthropy. They emphasize on philanthropy, and I associated that with the things I've done in the past, saying that was important for me as well. I mentioned their mentorship program. I know from A2SV and Santander, I said I asked them and said, and basically how the mentorship program was. They said it was good. They said it was good, so I want to be in this company, blah blah, that type of stuff. Basically, I think I did a lot good preparation for the HR stuff. And if you know how to answer the why Bloomberg, like the strengths and weaknesses parts, I think I'm pretty good at answering those questions. So if you basically look up questions, and then try to check out different answers on how you want to answer it, and basically figure out which one is more impactful. Yeah, so thank you, Ikram, for those questions. Next is Asher Samuel. Okay. Did you apply for the internships on your own, or did you receive some form of referral through A2SV? I basically applied directly. There was no referrals. And what were the difficult interview questions? Actually, I got asked on my first interview, I got asked basically 2 questions and a follow-up. The first question was very easy. The second one was easy, but the follow-up was hard. And for the second interview, it wasn't a lead code question, but it started easy, and then they kept on adding more difficulty to it. But the last version of the problem was it needed like shortest path, which is basically a hard on lead code. So expect like a medium to hard, generally. Okay, thank you. Next is how was your system design review question? How did you tackle it? For system design, there's like generally a few patterns which are very common within system design. So basically uh, what you want to do is try to go through as many types of system designs as possible, so that whatever question you get asked, you know which pattern to follow. The one I got asked was similar to basically I was asked to build an auditing system for an existing system, and that I'm used, like I already saw that type of question before. I've seen how to do like some distributed, like was it auditing or like some logging system. It was kind of similar to that, so I used that and tried to answer it based on basically the trick that I saw. Yeah, that's the kind of question I was asked. And second is, can you tell us some questions that you have been asked in the HR and final interview? So for the HR, it's basically what I said. It's tell me about yourself a little bit. Why Bloomberg? Your strengths and weaknesses. How do you handle uh, what is it? How do you handle comments from like, or like how do you handle criticism? I think that's one of the questions I got asked. So that's the type of questions you generally get asked. For the final interview, it was pretty similar to the ones beforehand, but the question I was very surprised about was I got asked, I forgot the question. Yeah, what is the worst project you've ever worked on? That was a question I was not ready for at all. Everything else I was pretty much knew I was gonna get asked, except that question. I kind of just mentioned one of the projects I worked on because there was bad timing. I had to rush a few things, so it was a bit difficult to work on that project. So I answered it that way. But it was, yeah, generally those are the type of questions you get asked. If you know like how to answer the generic ones, these are pretty much as generic as they come. There aren't any questions that are like particular to Bloomberg except why Bloomberg. Everything else is you'd find generally. Okay, Brooke, you said which hiking was tiring, the A2SV ones or Bloomberg's? Interesting question. It's definitely the Bloomberg's one, because I gained 10 kg once I've been there, and I did the hike after I've gained that weight. So it was a lot more difficult to do that hiking than the ones here because I was relatively fit when I was here. What skills helped you the most so far? I think it's communication. Being free to talk to these people, like having that freedom of like not being scared to ask questions was what really helped me, especially during the internship. Because if I was not asking those questions, I would not have done anything with my project. Like that wouldn't have uh, went well. yeah, so that I think that was the most important skill to have, because everything else is really learnable. Like coding is not that difficult once you kind of get into it, but the communication part, that having that freedom was very nice. And if you could change anything about what you've done so far, what would you do differently? I think I would have tried to have more fun, like the semester before I had to go to London. I don't know why I was too stressed with like having my visa and all that stuff, that I was too stressed and barely noticed that semester go by. I feel like I had a lot more time to relax, enjoy myself, because I made it, right? But yeah. Next question. How do you balance long-term projects with daily tasks, especially with A2SV and building some projects? Well, how you balance it is by not having long-term projects. I'm just kidding, obviously. Basically, it's time allocation. I think that's the most important thing you need. Um, if you know like how to target what you need. Let's say if I have something that's due tomorrow, I'll probably focus on that than something more of a long term. Yeah. So for my project, at least when I was doing the internship, obviously I wanted to finish the whole project as early as possible, right? That's the longer goal within the internship. But also there's a lot more things I needed to do daily, right? As in the like networking part, learning, like getting to meet other people, like the interns, the seniors, all that also matters as much, I believe, as much as working on your daily like task for the internship. So I think it's once you learn to allocate your time, um, you're set pretty much. And did you receive full-time offer from Bloomberg? I will refuse to answer that question. Next question is, what kind of projects should we add in our CV or portfolio? So if we don't have real life experience, I kind of mentioned this already, but I may have talked a bit fast. Basically, you need, I believe, you need three types of projects. Like if it's one of these three, it would, I think it should be on your CV. Basically, the first one is if it's a project that targets a problem within your community, or it solves a certain problem, then that's definitely important to have, because that means you're actually addressing problems, real world problems, right? That means it's usable, you have users of your project, hence it's definitely something worth talking about. That's the first type of. The second one is the ones that solve your problem, as in you may not have other users, but if you're solving a problem that you're facing specifically, then yeah, that's also something very interesting to talk about, because that means you're interested in that project, you're personally involved, which makes sense that you added it within your project. The last one is if you can't have a project that is within any of these two categories, then I think it should be at least a little bit challenging, where like you'd have something a bit complex. Let's say you worked with some distributed systems, some machine learning AI stuff, where those are a bit better to add than, let's say, a to-do app, right? You can't really say you learned a lot from a to-do app, but you can say you learned a lot from some distributed system that did some processing or whatever. So you want it to be one of these three. If it's not within these, then it's not as likely that you should add it. But it's not within your projects. You can also showcase that some of the other aspects these companies want, which is they want you within a team. So if you've worked with a team, adding that description into a project adds more value to it, because well, it's one of the qualities they want is your teamwork, communication, collaboration, right? And you can showcase these by working on projects with a team. So having that is decent as well. Okay, so you said, how can one get really good at communication like you? Uh, well, basically practice. I think that pretty much like everything else you do, you need practice. You put in time to it. and then yeah, basically hope for the best. I can't really say I'm the best at communication. I'm alright. I'm quite free when I feel a lot of freedom when talking in English. So I guess that's one aspect. But the main thing you need to learn is maintain confidence when talking with people. Um, whatever questions you have, you should ask. It doesn't matter. Like nobody's gonna think you're stupid because you ask questions. Uh, and then yeah, basically practice with the people around you. The more you do it, the better you'll get. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's not really a trick thing. You practice, you get better. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. Yes. Any crazy things you've done there? Um, I did a sudden 4 hour hike by myself. As I guess I will explain a little bit. I basically went to this city called Bournemouth, and then I went to and then took the train to like a close city where like it had a beautiful scenery, or so I was told. So I went there, checked my map, and I was like, okay, um, this looks the place I wanted to see was close, but to see more stuff, I could also take a 4 hour hike. So I was like, why not? I wasn't prepared at all. I had nothing to eat, drink, whatever. I had for some reason I had my PC with me, which weighed like a ton. So I did a hike all of a sudden, and basically by the end I was completely destroyed. My legs did not work for like a day. Good thing it was a Saturday because I could sleep the next day. Yeah, I think that's in terms of crazy. That's the only thing that really comes to mind. Yeah, very good thing I didn't pass out.
Does anyone have any additional questions? Anything you guys want to know? Okay, in that case, thank you so much, Metsehafe, for joining us and for sharing us your experience.
Thank you. I
One
appreciate
last question, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's a question that says, any resources you can share us?
I there's nothing I have on my at hand. Um, I have this group where I've been posting the internships, or like people have been posting internships, so can probably ask some of the people here well, to let you join that. But other than that, yeah, I don't really got. I should probably have. I want to create this guide for like interview prep for like the companies I know of. If I somehow work on that, I'll, I will try to share it. I'm sure somebody here will help me share it around. So if I have it at some point, if I'll create it, I will send it over. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Metsehafe, for taking the time to join us and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you.